Tenet is a 2020 sci-fi action thriller film directed by Christopher Nolan, known for his work on blockbuster movies such as Inception, The Dark Knight trilogy, and Interstellar. The film follows the protagonist, simply known as the protagonist, a CIA agent who embarks on a dangerous mission to prevent World War III. The mission involves him manipulating time and interacting with inverted objects, a concept that challenges the traditional linear progression of time. The film features an ensemble cast, including John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki. The movie boasts a high production value, with Nolan using practical effects and real stunts to create thrilling action sequences that defy expectations. Tenet has been praised for its originality and technical prowess, but it has also been criticized for its complicated plot and sometimes confusing storytelling. Nevertheless, the film has gained a cult following and has become a topic of debate among sci-fi enthusiasts and film critics alike.
In Kiev, Ukraine, an unnamed operative, the protagonist, assists in a CIA assignment to foil an opera siege and retrieve a stolen cache of plutonium. His mission also seems to be to rescue a man, which he does so with the help of a team with whom he blends in with SWAT teams. During the operation, the plutonium is found to be fake. Furthermore, the protagonist realizes that the opera was being bombed, and so he collects the bombs to save the people. The protagonist throws the bag of bombs away and the people are saved. He is then abducted and tortured until he bites on an apparent suicide pill before revealing any information. Upon waking, the protagonist learns the pill was a test of his loyalty. He is recruited into a secret organization, given only the information that the word Tenet and a cross-fingered gesture will open many doors for him. The protagonist infiltrates a facility where he learns that in the future, technology has been developed that allows objects to have their entropy reversed and move backward through time. To demonstrate this, a scientist presents him with bullets that fire in reverse. The scientist believes that there is a war coming as objects are being streamed back in time from the future. Tracking the metal from which the reversed bullets are made, the protagonist infiltrates the compound of an Indian billionaire in Mumbai with the aid of Neil, a British intelligence agent. He learns that it is in fact the billionaire's wife, Priya, who knows what is happening. Priya tells the protagonist that the time-reversing technology is under the control of a Russian arms dealer, Andrei Sater, who is in communication with the future. The protagonist meets Sir Michael Crosby, who tells him that an explosion went off in a now abandoned city in Russia known as Stalsk 12. The protagonist learns from him that in order to get to Sater, he needs to approach his, practically estranged, wife Kat. The protagonist meets Kat and they talk at a restaurant. Kat tells the protagonist that Sater has her under his control due to a forged painting that she gave to him. She says she saw a woman dive off their yacht in Vietnam when they were on holiday. Sater's men arrive at the restaurant soon. The protagonist manages to fight his way and escape, but one of them drives away with Kat just as the protagonist finishes the last henchman. The protagonist later tries to win Kat's trust by retrieving the painting from a freeport at Oslo airport. Neil goes first to inspect the situation and they plan to crash a cargo plane to start a fire to activate the lockdown procedure, allowing them to steal the painting. They take the help of Mahir, who crashes the aircraft and drops gold bars on the road as a distraction. During the operation, however, the protagonist and Neil are attacked by two masked men. Both antagonists escape before the protagonist and Neil are able to find out who they are. The protagonist meets Priya, who tells him that the two antagonists were the same person. The protagonist returns to Kat, asking for her help in meeting Sater. Kat arranges for the protagonist to attend a dinner party, hosted by Sater, but the oligarch does not trust the protagonist until he mentions opera. The protagonist, Kat, and Sater go sailing where Sater and the protagonist are discussing about plutonium when Kat pushes Sater out of the boat. The protagonist saves him and Kat is mad at him for that. Sater says he is in debt, so he funds the protagonist, who offers to steal weapons-grade plutonium for him. The protagonist and Neil plan a heist on a highway and they succeed in stealing the plutonium, which is in an orange case, from an armored vehicle, but they are interrupted by an inverted car. The car chases them until they see an inverted Sater holding a forward Kat at gunpoint in it. Sater signals the protagonist to hand over the plutonium, but the protagonist hands over an empty orange case and throws the plutonium into the Saab. The protagonist uncovers Sater and his gang's plot. They are operating a temporal pincer movement, in which they move both forwards and backward in time, by means of entering a temporal style, following the operation and then moving backward through time. At the temporal junction, Sator shoots Kat and leaves with her before Neil calls for reinforcements and they arrive to secure the temporal style. The protagonist suspects them, questioning Neil about who these people are. Neil tells him they are Priya's men, a team led by Ives. The protagonist follows Sator back through the temporal style despite being warned not to, where he turns out to be the driver of the Saab. He puts a radio device on an empty orange casing on the road and waits for it to go back into a car. He follows it and it turns out Sator saw the plutonium flying from the Saab back into forward protagonist's hands. Sator burns the car which turns into ice and manages to get hold of the algorithm piece off screen. The protagonist is rescued by Ives' team. Sator is revealed to be dying from inoperable pancreatic cancer and has turned omnicidal, believing that if he is to die, he would prefer to spread death to all humanity. He plans to return to a point in time when he was happy with Kat and then set off the device, which is connected to a dead man's switch linked to his heartbeat. The protagonist, Neil, and Kat follow Sator backward in time, traveling in a cargo ship container back to Oslo. The trio infiltrates the Freeport Art Storage Facility once again where they enter the temporal style that allows Kat to move forwards through time again and have her gunshot wound healed. The protagonist soon discovers he was, in fact, the unknown antagonist during their first operation at the Freeport and hence has to fight his past self to go through. The protagonist meets Priya to ask her to warn his past self about how dangerous Sator is. However, she says she won't change what is about to happen. The protagonist wants her word that Kat will be safe. She also reveals to him that Tenet will be founded in the future. She says Ives has a team ready for the mission. They travel further back in time, where a military operation is launched whereby the protagonist and Neil attempt to retrieve the doomsday device from Sator's men from the future in Stalsk 12. While Kat is with her husband on his yacht, aiming to prevent him from killing himself before the doomsday device is retrieved. They operate in a temporal pincer movement where the red team moves forward covering the blue team's extraction and the blue team moves backward covering the red team's extraction. The protagonist and Ives are on the red team while Neil is on the blue team. Neil uses a temporal style there to invert back to forward. However, Neil's efforts are in vain. The protagonist and Ives enter the tunnel and get stuck in there. They go deeper and find the place where the doomsday device is monitored by Volkov, who is behind a gate that is locked. Sator talks to the protagonist from the boat about his plan through a communication device in the tunnel. Sator then orders Volkov to shoot the protagonist in the head when the dead body emerges. The protagonist and Ives kill Volkov and retrieve the doomsday device. The blue team member closes the gate and goes back to the entrance. Time is running out. Neil, who has switched halfway, throws a rope through the hole on top of the tunnel and the protagonist and Ives hold on as they are pulled up. Kat kills Sator on the boat. The explosion goes off but the world is saved. Kat realizes that she was the woman her past self had seen on the boat and dives into the water. Ives breaks the algorithm into 3 pieces and divides it between himself, the protagonist, and Neil. Ives emphasizes that they should keep it secret. Neil passes his piece to the protagonist as he intends to go back in. It was then that the protagonist notices that Neil has a red string on his back. He deduces that Neil was therefore the masked man who saved him during the opera siege and the blue team member who gets killed by Volkov inside the tunnel. The protagonist sheds tears as he knows his friend's destiny now. The protagonist then saves Kat from being killed by Priya after all of the film's events, revealing that it is his job to tie up loose ends and that he has been the leader of Tenet operations for 2 years in the past.